the other stuff. I get it in a folder to boot. Thank you.
Oh, Ryan. Ryan. Oh. He's busy.
Sorry. Yep.
No, I was just gonna say, last week I had to do coaching stuff for hockey.
Okay.
And there's 150 people on that WebEx. I don't remember if it was a WebEx.
Wow.
Hi, Becky.
It was kind of a production.
That's a lot of.
They did a good job and it was 3 hours, 2 dates.
Okay.
And guys from Alaska to everywhere. So
Manage it.
they put you in groups, breakout groups and everything like that. And they blew you in them, blew you out of them. But it was funny, on Wednesday was the day that big storms went through.
Yeah.
The first one. And like people were in storm shelters the whole night. And then it come through. We'll get an instructor was in Wisconsin. I hit him.
Okay.
He lost his power.
Funny.
And they got done about 9:30. And then I couldn't get back on. I don't know what was on, but so it was kind of cool. At one time, there's 152 people on. I was like,
A lot of people.
right. They had a pretty good system going.
Yeah. Well, that's good.
Yeah.
So they're reaching agreements because
Just telling them our coach stuff. People
figure out how to do it.
We had 182 people at one time on the whole WebEx. So,
I've been on a couple like that. Pretty amazing
Yeah.
that it works. If you want it, if you want it.
It's just.
they managed it pretty good too. It wasn't just a cluster.
Yeah.
So they tell you,
Go ahead for something, maybe do it. No, don't do it. It's just my hangups.
Same thing they did, they're doing with
Just a form of
the cloud services. Their cloud, that's the money, it was their error. State said, no, we're paying that back, it's not our error, or they're putting it. One part of the state is telling the HHS, it's coming out of your budget, not that.
Right.
I think they're still fighting that too.
I'll fight that forever. You know, it's interesting, every meeting that you go to, they talk about the state has a surplus. And it's like, but they owe us money.
Oh, I know.
You know, if the school association, I mean, everywhere you go, it's like they owe us money. So if they don't have a surplus, they need to pay us.
That's been our contention since I've been a commissioner. If they paid what they were supposed to be paying us right along, like Helen, Steve talks about it all the time.
Right. Yep.
Okay, it is 10 o'clock. Call the meeting to order and rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome, everyone. If you're home watching on live stream or whatever, you're probably happy to do that on a day like this, but it's winter in Minnesota. So anybody here are dialed into the meeting want to speak at public forum?
This is Gussie. I would like to speak.
Go ahead, Gussie.
Okay, and I hope that you feel as uncomfortable hearing this as I feel about talking about it, but the average household income I found out recently, at least for Sandstone Township, and I'm guessing so goes the county, is $45,000. You're looking at increasing the sheriff's salary to 125,000, the county attorney's to 137, which is 3 times that average. And what I just believe that if the other counties are looking at this same kind of thing, we shouldn't be following that pack. You need to step away from the pack and be determined to keep these salaries, keep these prices down so that people can afford them. I mean, you're looking at raises in salaries, non-union salaries, insurance savings accounts, health insurance, larger payments, less payments for them, more payments for us. You know, a lot of residents lost their jobs last year, and so there was a year they're a year behind, a lot of them are, or they were salaried employees and they just didn't work at all. And I'm sure the courthouse people didn't lose their jobs, but, not that I would want them to, but when you give raises to departments, department heads from other counties, you know, those, I'm just gonna say those jobs is not a part of this either, but those jobs should be filled locally. There's plenty of talent out there. You know, attempts at justifying these increases in wages and the 3.6% levy increase you're talking about are only excuses for weak leadership of the Board of Commissioners, I believe. And there are negligible commitments to curtail the spending and the salaries. Now, if you can't hear the residents' disdain out there about the spending and the thoughtless increases, you're not listening. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Anybody else? Anybody, Ryan?
No.
All right. We'll move on to the agenda. That's some additions, David.
Mr. Chair, if we could add consent agenda item number 15, it's the purchase of a jail steamer oven to replace one that is broken. If we could add to regular agenda item number 7.1, labor negotiations update, and we do have a tentative agreement that's been approved by the bargaining unit, is ready for county board consideration. And if we could add regular agenda item number 10.1, a strategic planning meeting for the county commissioners. So we have one that we are planning for January 11th, which is joint with the HRA. And then this second one will be just for county commissioners focused on your priorities.
Any other additions, corrections? If not, we'll look for a motion.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Got a motion by Lovegren, seconded by Moore to adopt the agenda as amended. Any discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We'll move on to the minutes of December 9th, County Board minutes and summary for publication, and December 9th, Truth and Taxation meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion by Ludwig, second by Lovegren. Any discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We've got no other reports and correspondence. We'll move on to the consent agenda. Long one.
Yeah, she's the fifth
In
one.
front of you for quite some time.
I'll move the consent agenda with the addition.
Second.
We got a motion by Moore, second by Ludwig to approve the consent agenda with the additional number 15. Any discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Personnel Committee report.
I'll take that.
All right.
And yeah, we had a meeting December 13. Kind of kept the people from starting a little early. I was a little late, so I apologize to everybody that was there. So Health and Human Service, we acknowledge the resignation of social worker Nancy Johnson effective December 14th, 2021, and approve backfill of the position, any subsequent vacancies due to internal promotion or lateral transfer. Acknowledge the resignation of eligibility worker Denise Blessy effective December 6, 2021, and approve backfill in any subsequent vacancies due to internal promotion or lateral transfer. In the sheriff's office, acknowledge the resignation of corrections officer David Ackerman effective November 8, 2021. Separation of part-time probationary corrections officer Hooker effective November 11, 2021, and approve backfill of both positions positions, any subsequent vacancies due to internal promotion or lateral transfers. In the sheriff's office, acknowledge the resignation of probationary deputy sheriff. I think it was Jorge Jimenez. Sorry if I said that wrong. Effective November 30th, 2021, and approved backfill of position. Any subsequent vacancies due to internal promotion or lateral transfer. Acknowledge the employment separation of Sergeant Robert Overson effective December 3rd, 2021. The position was filled in September of 2021. That was one of them we hired ahead. In the county attorney's office, acknowledge the resignation of Assistant County Attorney John Lauer effective December 2021, and approve the backfill of the position, any subsequent vacancies that may occur due to internal promotion or lateral transfer. And then on E, we went into elected officials' salaries. And we did have some decent conversation about this. And we did consider the 2022 salary for the county sheriff, Jeff Nelson. The personnel committee recommended $125,014 effective January 2022. Are we doing, should we do this all in a recommendation or?
Your option.
Okay, maybe what should we?
You want to take A through D and then do that one?
Yeah, I think that's what we want to do. I think that was our plan and I think I got ahead of
That
it.
makes sense to me.
So, yeah, so with that, I would take everything up to the elected official salaries. And I would make a motion to approve that on the personnel committee.
I'll second.
Okay, we got a motion by Moore, second by Ludwig to approve the personnel committee report up through item C. Is there any discussion on that?
Through item D.
Through item,
Correct, through item D.
Yeah.
yeah, through item D. Yep, I'm sorry,
Nope.
through item D. Everybody except me understand where we're at? So any discussion on that? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Now we'll go back to the elected officials' salaries.
And I think we'll just take them one at a time. What do you think?
What's that?
Do you want to take them one at a time or
I'll ask the chair.
is that all right if we do these one at a time?
Yes.
Okay. So like I said, consider 22 salary for the sheriff at the recommended 125,014. And that was, we had a pretty lengthy discussion. In the last couple of years, we've tried aligning the sheriff and it puts right in the middle. So of our close counties, and I think we had like 5 or 6. It wasn't just the Pickums, it was a few other ones added in there. So the sheriff was pretty low on the scale a few years ago. So we've made a few strides here to try to get them a little better aligned with everybody else. So that's where we came up with the 125,014. And I would recommend considering that in a motion.
So Moore makes a motion for the sheriff
Ludwig will second.
and Ludwig seconds. Is there any discussion, questions?
So you said,
Yep.
you said that this puts him at midpoint between those 6 counties?
Yeah. And I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but yeah, there was quite a bit higher. Not too many lower. It was right in there.
He's probably sitting around the 80%. You know.
And some of the comparables were people that just got there, some others.
And what we're looking, the numbers we're saying that at are last year's contracts, not, because we don't know what the rest of them are getting. So they're back a year. So we
Yeah.
put them up. So you understand what, yeah.
Yeah, and then to know that a lot of them are new employees and didn't
Yeah.
have the years of service, that's big too.
Yeah. So that's kind of where we came in there. So.
Sure.
Yes,
Then the total, this is the take home, but then the total, I believe, is in the 180 range, 180,000. When you consider all the other
With
with benefits and everything.
That,
So does that align with the other comparisons that you've
that most,
said with that?
yeah, Mr. Chair.
yes.
Most of the comparable counties would have the exact same type of contributed benefits, para, social security, et cetera. Healthcare is the one that may vary from county to county, but most counties do pay substantially towards single or family coverage, depending on what the employee chooses. So I don't, without having the comparative data in front of me, I would guess that our benefits are, we historically have done well when compared to other counties
Mhm.
on the benefit, on the health insurance payments. So, I mean, I think that's,
But all the rest are basically statute driven.
yeah,
Social security and retirement.
yeah. And so there's not an option. Those just are a percentage of whatever the salary is. And then the health insurance is the one that varies from county to county.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
I just want to make a 20,000 foot comment or something. It isn't to the person that this salary is for an office. And that it's the highest, as far as the departmental for the law enforcement group. So he's not going to be the sheriff forever. And we all know law enforcement is really, really important. So it's hard to recruit to sometimes, probably getting harder all the time. So it's just something I take into consideration too.
Right.
And then I'll say more on the next one too, but so I support that.
Yeah, and I think if I understood some of your comment, Matt, the health insurance is a benefit. It's not a payment to the individual. And we do have employees who don't take the county health insurance. They may get it through a spouse employment or some other source, and there is no additional compensation to them, right? It's not like if you get health insurance, we impact you negatively, and if you don't get it, we impact you positively.
Right.
Because it's just a benefit payment.
Mr. Chair.
yes.
That is something that we've been working on for a few years now, because we always do them analysis market, but it is strictly just wage. And we've always, I know me and Matt have had the conversation, we'd like to see the whole package deal. In the private sector, typically they give you a whole package kind of deal, where this is what it's costing the employer. So that is something I think we're gonna probably try to work on a little bit more as it goes here and see where you stack up. But most of it, like you said, is statute driven. So there isn't, I don't think there's a lot of fluff as far as that goes.
There is none.
Yeah.
I mean, we contribute to the retirement.
Yep.
Which is statute driven. We contribute to social security, which is driven by social security and Medicaid. And that's how,
Yep,
that's how everybody has to do it.
yep.
Oh, I'd like to add, I can't see anybody walking in and just doing Jeff Voorhees's job. I think that what they do is way above my pay grade, way above something that I can do. And I just am thankful that we have people that have that expertise that will walk in and do those things for our county.
So any other questions? If not, we've got a motion by Moore, second by Ludwig. We're voting on the sheriff's salary. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Now we'll consider the salary for County Attorney Reese Frederickson.
And much like the sheriff, we had a lot of discussion about it. And this is some alignment again there. And just trying to look at them same counties kind of again. And I think even Reese went a little further as far as, I think he went more towards the metro area as well, looking at that and some other stuff around. So we just puts him pretty much right in the middle of all that again. And part of that was tenure and a lot of stuff like that too. So we all know he could probably go somewhere else and make a lot more money. He does a great job for this county and we're lucky to have him, I think. So I would consider the salary for the county attorney, Reese Frederickson, at $137,536, effective January 1, 2022.
But are you making a motion, Josh?
Yep.
I'll second. And Mr. Chair, can I make?
Yes. Yep.
It's the same thing. When you have, the county attorney is the highest law enforcement person really in the county, even though you have a sheriff, because he has the ultimate say on what's going to be prosecuted and, actually provides downward pressure or feedback to the law enforcement that happens on the way, cases and stuff in that sense. So that's a big thing as far as public. Like if someone's arrested and we want people prosecuted and making a case, for public safety, and it goes with the sheriff too. It's the whole fabric of what keeps us a civil society. And I know that's basic consideration, but it's consideration. It's a tough job. And then the other thing with Reese is he's taken on the city contracts for prosecution, which is bringing in roughly $40,000 to the county, and that's a lot of extra work too. So, and then of course, he represents all the county boards too. So that work comes in, SWCD. So if there's issues like that, he's the guy that has to represent all of this. So there's a lot of work.
So, Mr. Chair, it's
Yes.
fair to say, like, you basically take 40 off the top of that, because that's what's coming in to offset some of the.
Well, you could, it does. It's coming into our coffers, but if he puts, it's his time, and it's a salary, so he's not getting paid hourly. So yes, I would say you could do that.
And one of the other things we actually talked about a little earlier in the personnel committee was this was the first attorney, assistant county attorney he's had to replace in quite a while already, and that just kind of shows culture of the office. I think the turnover rate, we all know, especially in this day and age, turnover is just notorious or atrocious, and it just costs money. I was talking to Mille Lacs County Commissioner yesterday, and he said their assessors, they don't have an assessor, they don't have an environmental, the whole office is in disarray. And he goes throughout the whole county, it's in disarray. And that starts with leadership. Everybody always talks about money, money, money. I know money is not the number one driver. It's not even close if most people don't understand that. So I think that saves a ton of money right there. So I appreciate all he's done in his office. So.
Yeah, and I think he serves the entire county strong and a strong model.
I'd like to add that I think that we have more cases going to court than we had in a long time, and that you're doing a really good job keeping our criminals at bay. And so thank you. I think that says a lot. We know that we're safer because we have people that will stand up for our rights. So
I think Reese and his office take on a lot of things that we ask of them. Reese represents us in our labor negotiations, and not too many years ago, we hired outside counsel to take on that responsibility, and I think we paid way more than this 12 years ago for outside legal counsel just in labor negotiations. And so I think when you tie that all up in a bow and then you look at how many assistant county attorneys they have in some neighboring counties.
yeah,
We've got a bunch of rock stars that work for us, and Reese is the leader of that band. And so we're getting a pretty good bang for our buck. So I totally support what the recommendation is.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
You could take one more comment before you.
Yep.
Getting ready to vote. Matt, you made the point that the county attorney's office contracts for prosecution with some of the jurisdictions. The county sheriff does the same with
Right.
police.
Yes, I forgot that.
Having worked in small cities as an administrator, there is no way that those individual jurisdictions could as cost effectively provide police or prosecution than through the contracts they get with the county. And so it seems like a partnership that works well, both for the county and for the cities.
Thank you so much for bringing that up, because that would cost the taxpayers a lot more money if they were gonna have a PD. A lot. So just serving those towns.
And maybe to, I know we already voted on Sheriff Nelson, but that was part of one of the things that was brought up was the total cases in the county. And he's responsible for all of them. If you had a police department, they would take some of them and he had some of them numbers. So they were showing, I don't even know, but 2,500 and only 1,500 went to the county and the other ones were local jurisdictions. So that was another thing where we talked about that too. So.
We have a motion by Moore, second by Ludwig for the county attorney, Reese Frederickson salary. Any more discussion, comments?
I gotta take an opportunity to make a
Yep.
comment. One more thing, he also handles land sales for the county, right?
Yep,
Okay, all right, thank you.
yep. All in favor, say aye.
Hi.
Opposed? Our favorite thing we don't like to do is talk about county commissioners' compensation, per diems, mileage, all that stuff. Anyway, we have, no matter what we do, we need a resolution for setting that salary, whether or not it stays the same, goes up, goes down, goes sideways. I was, if I could just say one thing before Josh, I was just almost taken aback because there was some materials that got sent out that Pine County has always kind of been on the low side of county commissioners' compensation. But we've gotten, for counties our size, gotten quite a bit behind. I'm not advocating anything, I'm just pointing out a fact. And your recommendation is?
Well, I can go into a
Yep.
little discussion because
Yep.
we were planning on, we had some discussion and we talked about it because so our wage hasn't changed since 2016. It was at a 2% back then, that it went up, which amounted to $400. Since then, since 16, we did add a little bit for the chair, a monthly above and beyond. And that was just because the chair duties do require a lot more work. Talked a little bit about this, but we didn't talk a lot at personnel because we thought it doesn't really make sense not to have the whole board involved.
Yeah, I think we went to, because I think we've discussed it in the past, was
Yep.
just having the automatic COLA.
Yep.
It goes with the other, and we've never done that,
No,
but I know we've discussed it. And we said, we've never done that.
Yep.
So we just let it, and we thought that's something that I think the whole group needs to think about too.
and part of it is, like Steve did say, you don't wanna like just stay somewhere and lose it. And all of a sudden, one day you look at it and it's like, wow, we're just really falling behind. I don't think anybody that's sitting on this board is $400, 2%, 3%, or whatever, gonna make a bit of difference at the end of the day. That's why I technically, I ain't even recommending I'll recommend the same we're currently at. But just something to keep on the radar. Maybe this is something we talk about strategic plan for us or whatever, but we just wanted to bring it out in the open and just have that discussion. And it's a hard discussion to have, just like police and sheriff and have to come to us and ask because nobody advocates for them. So Just something to keep in mind, maybe when you see your colleagues around, ask them kind of where they're at, how they do it. I do like the way it's structured. But you don't want to lose sight about, you do want some quality people in the position as well. And people don't do it if there's not some sort of compensation. Not that I think this is a full-time job or ever should be, but
Tomorrow,
yeah.
higher salary.
Oh, yeah. There is some that make six figures.
I kind of added up with the chart we looked at the counties and then divided by, we're like right at that.
Yep.
If you average it out, that's where we sit.
Yep.
There, it's like 23 something, so it's like 20, we're not that far off.
And I know some of them pay a straight salary, no matter how many meetings you go to. We kind of, I think, do it similar to half and half. I don't know what it actually works out to be. Is our per diem about half of? No, it must not. It's not even close, is it? Yeah.
I'm comfortable. I, like you said, Josh, I don't think any of us ran for this office or decided to rerun for this office based on the salary. I don't believe that at all. We do it because we want to serve people. We like what we're doing. We think we're probably moving the needle a little bit on some.
I think that says a lot when you say that, because you hope that people want to just serve instead of make money.
Right.
So, and that's kind of what where we landed before too.
Yeah. But it is a position that requires more than one night a month or something like that. So I do believe you need some sort of compensation. Otherwise you would just fall off and it would just be a few people that, so, and it's nice to have people, competing for the position as well,
Yes.
so, because then that kind of shows there is a little bit there. I don't know. So my recommendation is to remain unchanged. The same as last year, this current year. So that's my recommendation.
That's a motion.
Yep.
I'll second that.
I got a motion by Moore, a second by Lubgren to leave the compensation package the same with per diems, and the board chair, whoever that is, gets an extra stipend. And
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
And that would be to adopt resolution 2021-83.
yes,
Scroll down.
that would be,
Sounds good. I will make the motion for the resolution 2021-83. Sorry, I didn't.
I'll second it.
and Lubgren seconds that. Is there any discussion?
I would like to say
Yes.
something. I was talking to another county and they actually raised their levy because they wanted to raise their commissioner salaries because they wanted to have more qualified people coming in. So I think just the fact of talking that we're doing it because it's a service to our people, I think that that's huge because that's who we are. So, when you've got other counties that are raising taxes so that they can pay their commissioners more, it's nice to be in a county where we're saying that we're willing to do this.
Well said.
I do believe I've been on the board ending my 15th year, and we have raised the commissioner salary once, and that was in 2016. So I don't think anybody can accuse the commissioners of feathering their own bed. I believe we raised the per diem once about, I don't remember what year that was. And we raised the salary to 2016.
Yeah, I think the soil and water was even the same. There was just a long duration where they did it. I think the reason you say you run for a reason and.
Right.
And-
money.
And we can't lose sight of it though. You can't just stay the same forever. And we've done that with certain things and then it just doesn't. So like I said, I think taking a real good look at it is, and it probably won't change. It's just gonna be the way it is. But I think we do have to keep it in sight, and that's bringing it forth to the board and having a good discussion on it.
Yeah.
All right. All in favor of resolution 2021-83? Say aye.
Hi.
Opposed? All right. On this, I think this is good news, Reese, but opiate litigation settlement. Consider approval of 2021-81, supporting the settlement at entities in the state. And I'm gonna explain that, Reese, where we're at.
And Mr. Commissioner or Mr. Chairman. So we were part of a litigation that sued multiple manufacturers and distributors of opioids. Of those, 4 of them have entered a settlement agreement with the state. And it's one of those agreements that it goes up if more entities participate. And so what we're considering today is whether we should sign on to this. There is a percentage formula of what Pine County is expected to get. And then with that money, there's a list of things that, a lot of possibilities of what we can do with that money regarding addressing the opioid crisis. And I'll note that our counsel on this is Jared Shepard on our lawsuit. And he's joined us online here to answer any specific questions about that too.
Thanks, Reese. Thanks, Jared, for joining us. When you hear the settlement that's going on with the state, you think, yippee skippy, we're gonna grab a whole bunch of money. But then when you realize there's a formula that's set out and it's over 18 years. And at first I go, holy crap. But then I think, well, 18 years, we can really build a program if we get 50 grand a year. We can know that's going to exist for a long time. 18 years is a long time in our society, but Lord knows we need some help with drug addiction and the devastation that opiates have caused in our county. So can you just give us a quick overview? If we sign this resolution, what's our next step and what do we do?
Sure. Can everyone hear me?
Yep. Perfect.
Okay, excellent. I can see myself on the big screen there, so. So I think it's important to note for the board, this settlement happened because the settling manufacturer and distributors, negotiated it through the states with the idea that the states would then go back to all of their litigating entities and try to get everyone on board. Given the sort of huge nature of this opioid litigation in all the states and local government entities, it really is quite the enterprise. And what happened here locally, resulting in the allocation agreement, and I'll explain that a little bit more, is that the Attorney General then came into the state and convened an expert panel on the public health components of it, which then resulted in that list of abatement strategies that is part of the MOA, the Memorandum of Understanding within the state. So when we get this money, the county can use it. I think it's like 8 pages. So it's a very lengthy list, but that was created after convening a panel of public health experts. The other thing the AG did was set up a signers table where sort of all of the litigation interests got together and tried to figure out how best to allocate money within our state. So as part of that table, you had litigating entities represented, litigating counties represented, the Association of Minnesota Counties, the League of Minnesota Cities, the Association of Greater Minnesota Cities, and the AG's office, all coming together to try to figure out how best to allocate money within the state. And so there's really 2 things that the resolution in front of you does. One, it authorizes the county to participate in the settlement agreement, and that's really an easy process. Reese or David, I think David will go on and execute these 2 releases on behalf of the county. and therefore sort of raising our hand for the settlement. The second piece is what's called the MOA, the Memorandum of Understanding, or the State Subdivision Agreement. And that really is the model for how this is going to be implemented within our state, and including the allocation to counties and specifically the allocation to Pine County. And I think in terms of, it's hard for me to see who is speaking, but I assume maybe it was the chair who was speaking about the 18 months or 18 years and what we can do. One of the things that I find pretty amazing, even though it is just a sort of a general agreement, it really does emphasize collaboration between counties and cities. So cities cities that are receiving money can choose to give that money to the county, all or part of that money to the county if the county has a program that's working for their residents. There's communication that's built into using the money, so that Pine County, for example, will be communicating with municipalities within its jurisdiction to make sure that everyone is on board and understands how we're using that money. So it really is designed to try to figure out the best way for us to implement and to abate the opioid crisis within our state and within our local jurisdiction. So all that in my mind is sort of baked in there, in a very general sense, but I think it's important. One thing that I like to mention, and this is mentioned in my report, is that when the county signed on to litigation, we had a standard, contingency fee agreement of 33 1/3. The way this settlement is happening, that 33 1/3 has gone away. So the federal judge in Ohio, who was presiding over the multi-district litigation, issued an order 9 months or so ago, capping attorneys' fees at 15%, saying that he thinks attorneys' fees that are above 15% are presumptively unreasonable. So that's sort of our cap. And what we did within the state subdivision agreement is acknowledge two things. One, as part of the national settlement with these 4 entities, there's going to be a pool of money for attorneys' fees. All of the attorneys can apply to that pool and receive money. The understanding is, kind of number crunching, is that would bring attorneys up to about 7%. So we created a state backstop fund within the subdivision agreement among 7% of that local government money is going to be created into a state backstop fund. And then if the attorneys can't get what they need from the national fund, they will apply to the state backstop fund. I think that's important to know because it two reasons. One, it kind of wipes out the contingency fee agreement that the county entered into. And two, for those entities that are receiving money that didn't litigate, they are then kind of paying a little bit of those attorneys' fees. So, for example, cities over 30,000 are receiving money within this allocation agreement, even if they litigated or not. So they will be paying a little bit of the county's attorney's fees by virtue of the way we set this up. Excuse me. So I think that's all of the high points I wanted to hit, but I will certainly stand for any questions.
Reese, do you have anything to add?
Just one kind of point / question. Well, first, I wish you would have went before you discussed my salary here, but but the real point is that we settled 4 of the defendants, and I'm assuming, Jared, our lawsuit continues with the other number of defendants that we have. Is that correct?
That's correct. That is correct. And I think the big takeaway is that this state subdivision agreement is sort of the blueprint for how that would work going forward. Presumably, there may be, again, negotiations with the states to come back to the local government entities. But how that money would be received in the state is going to go through the same framework that we're approving here. In other words, that 75% to local government entities and the percentages allocated to Pine County. And so the big one out there, I would say, there's several defendants that we have out there still. several of whom are in bankruptcy, but the big one is Purdue Pharma. And as everyone might know, the judge just, a federal judge just recently sort of rejected the bankruptcy plan there in terms of the Sackler family and their role and how much they'd have to contribute to the bankruptcy. So that remains to be seen and how that will play out, but that's still out there.
Mr. Chair, if I could make a couple of comments, you had asked kind of next steps. And I think today is really the end of the attorney piece on the lawsuit, right? And so the next steps are really up to us as a county. And so the one part of the agreement that I know Julie Ring at AMC had talked about is the legislative change that's needed. So by approving this agreement, we're agreeing to support changes to Minnesota Statute 256 and the opioid epidemic response advisory council. It's kind of a wonky thing, but we're agreeing to support that, which would mean the money would flow more cleanly to the local governments. And then once we get through the settlement and get the funds, the planning for what do we use those funds for, the lead for that is public health. And so we're agreeing that public health has the chief strategist role at the table. And so I anticipate soon in the new year, Sam and her team will be working on framing that up for the county board to start discussing and considering.
And am I kind of in the ballpark when I did the quick math at the AMC conference and it works somewhere in the ballpark of 50,000 a year?
Yeah, if you take the 1.259 million divided by 18.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a good planning number. And there's some, I don't want to call it rounding, but there's some work on the back end that as that plays out, there may be more or less money available for the local government. So there could be some small changes as the process works itself out.
Right. But just so the public doesn't believe we're getting 1.5 million every year for 18 years, we're getting that divided over 18 years.
Yeah, and that's the perspective, Steve, that I think makes it daunting now to think we have a significant addiction problem in Pine County in greater Minnesota. We now have some funds to put towards how do we mitigate that? How do we avoid that? How do we do treatment? And I think as you are suggesting, we'll soon learn that $50,000 a year is not going to solve all of those problems, but maybe it gets us a new focus and gets us the ability to leverage some other resources that maybe we could make a dent in the addiction issues in the county.
Yes.
Question if I can. Is that spending that money then allocated or limited to just one specific thing? I mean, you have to, or is it, you get the money and then locally you decide exactly how?
As Mr. Shepherd, I think, pointed out, there's about 8 pages of eligible uses that are pretty flexible, right? We're not going to have trouble finding legitimate uses, but they're in that big packet you got, they're enumerated there. And public health can help us work through what those mean and what those look like for us.
All right, thank you.
I'm pretty sure commissioners' salaries doesn't.
Oh, I just with ARPA and with the other, it's sometimes you get, you might struggle a bit to find exactly the best need for our county. I just wanted to.
Yeah, I think
Clarity on that.
I think maybe the, what's the group that meets the Chemical Health Coalition probably already has some ideas about some things they've been working on already, but maybe there's some bold new fresh things that they've just thought about but never had the funds to do. So
sure,
I think it'll be interesting to see where it comes out. But
Mr. Chair, I have a question. So if I understand it, are they promoting maybe neighboring counties to join and create something? Is that kind of what I heard? We can join other jurisdictions with the dollars?
I think we could, but I think
everybody suffers from, where do we put these people, right?
I think we could. I haven't read enough, but the real thing that I heard at AMC was that if you have a city within your county that's also getting funds, that there's some very clear paths that you can commingle or put those funds together.
So it stays within the county.
Yeah,
We don't have any cities within our county that are getting it.
No,
no. But anyway, the first step is to pass this resolution, then we get in the state settlement thing, which I think we have to give our hats off to. It's why we belong to a thing called AMC. They put this thing together and went from the default button for the settlement was counties got 15% and the state kept 85%. And I think the final settlement that came out with the AG's office was completely reversed. So the counties are seen as the people that have been mostly affected and they need the money the most. So I think it's a good win for everybody. So we're looking for,
I have one more question.
yes,
We're talking about, we still have a bunch of other pharmaceutical companies that we have a lawsuit against. So this is going to settle the ones on this. Are you still going to be the attorney that's going to work with all of the other? So you're going to continue being our attorney, working with all of the other companies, all the other pharmaceutical companies with the lawsuits against them?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
I will move resolution 2021-81.
I will second this.
got a motion by Ludwig, second by Lovegren to pass resolution 2021-81. Any more discussion, comments? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. I think we're getting to easier stuff now. Appointment to the East Central Regional Library Board, effective January 1st. The reappointment would actually be for Judy Shalene, who enjoys being on that board. I've talked to her and.
Yep. She agreed to do it again.
Yep. It's always nice when you have a willing, so we need a motion to reappoint her.
I'll make a motion to reappoint Judy Shalene as a board trustee for the East Central Regional Library.
I'll second.
Got a motion by Lovegren, seconded by Moore to reappoint Judy Shalene to the Central Regional Library Board. Any discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Clean Water Partnership Loan Amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Kelly Shore, County Auditor Treasurer. So before you today, you have a resolution to amend our 2020 Minnesota Clean Water Partnership Project Implementation Plan. So if you remember way back in 2016, we began a loan program for folks to replace their failing sewers. And so that first 4 years of that program, we got $900,000, and it took us to the very end of that 4 years to spend that $900,000. When we redid it in 2020 to start August 1st of 2020, we had discussed do we think 900,000 for the next 4 years is going to be good? And I said, yeah, I think that'll work great. We did good the first time. But as of November, we had spent the $900,000 already. That just shows the need of the septic system replacements that's needed in Pine County. To date, we've replaced 90. We've got about 30 pending applications. So, the need is huge. This year, we also ran into the fact that you couldn't put in a mound system for less than 15,000. Previously 12 to 15, and now we're seeing 15 to 25. So that also makes the process go faster. So with that, the Pollution Control Agency is willing to amend our 2020 grant agreement to double it, $1.8 million. I asked them because I was concerned, what happens when we spend that $900,000, that new $900,000 in a year? And they assured me we can just keep relooking at it. Because the needs there, I mean, someday hopefully we're gonna run out, or run out of non-compliant septic systems, but at the rate it's going, you know, the new 900,000 could go pretty fast. Questions?
Yes. It's a loan repayment program.
Correct.
So how much are we starting to see come back?
Right, and so it's interesting because they're also not transferable to new owners. So if you're selling, it has to be paid off.
Oh, okay.
And so we are seeing some of those original loans, 2016, 2017, that are turning over. People are selling now that the market's so high. So the dollars coming in end up actually pretty extensive every year, or even we kind of look at it in 6-month segments just because that's how the property tax settlements go. And it's all settled through the property taxes. And so right at this point, it's about $100,000 that's coming back in every 6 months.
Is that able to get put back in the program then, or is that
So then.
satisfy the?
Right, so then we're paying back that 2016 loan
Okay,
as those dollars come
got
back.
you. Got you.
So we're paying back those 2016s.
Got you. So
We have the books there.
I will make a motion to pass resolution 2021-80 for the Clean Water Partnership Project.
I'll second.
got a motion by Lovegren, seconded by Moore to reauthorize or amend our program from 900,000 to 1.8 million. Any discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Kelly. Highway 23 Coalition is something we've kind of pushed off our back burner, kind of re-entered here, I think lately when we've talked about economic development in Pine County. And maybe the Highway 23 Coalition is a good organization. With my personal opinion is that we would trade this for the Rural County Association, because this is right in our backyard. It stretches from here to Pipestone, you know, or wherever it ends up in southwest Minnesota. If you've ever driven on Highway 23, you go all the way kitty corner, but it comes into Pine County. They're most concerned from the freeway west as a corridor to commerce. We have quite a bit of traffic that comes through Pine County on Highway 23.
Mr. Chair?
Yes,
I was talking to one of the people down at the conference that is really on this board and promoting it from the St. Cloud area. I think he might be from Benton County. And the one thing I found out is that they're not talking about working on our Highway 23 for like over 4 years. That's not even really in the outskirts. Everything is going to be going down south to get to Highway 90. So I don't know. I just don't know how this is going to benefit. I understand Highway 23 is big and it benefits us, you know, we all drive it. But I don't.
they are doing some corridor work between Laura
Are they?
and here they're planning. But I know one thing from being on the Northeast Minnesota Coalition, 4 years is a real fast timeline in highway construction. You have to be at the table way before it happens. You can't join that organization and expect that you're going to see big results by June. Because money, the cycles of funding come slowly. And so we are looking at some turn lanes and stuff in the Brook Park area, but I think as we look at the development south of Hinckley, and we look at possibly upgrading that exchange there, those are the kind of things where the more influence we can have, the better off we are.
And Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
I would even add that I think this is more beneficial than rush line.
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
Mr. Chair, maybe for the benefit of Terry and JJ, they did come to a meeting a year or so ago to present.
Yeah.
And so they were very engaged. And I think, like Steve said, we just deferred a decision on that. And so we didn't invite them this time. We certainly could invite them. And I'm sure Aaron Beckman, their executive director, would be happy to join any meeting or talk individually with any commissioners who are interested.
But I recommend that we
Oh,
go ahead.
you're looking at it.
Well, they don't even have us on the map. It ends at,
Yeah,
oh, right, but it ends at Hinckley.
yeah, I think we got a little education we can help them with.
Yeah, you know.
But I think you got to be part of
Right.
something to get something.
That upper chunk.
You make a motion?
Evergreen Memorial.
No, I didn't.
Oh, okay.
Did you?
I'll make a motion to join the Highway 23 coalition, and replace it with the Rural Counties Association. So
Yeah,
it would be getting out of the Rural Counties Association and going with the Highway 23. That's my motion.
we have a second. I will second that motion. Now we have some time for discussion.
I have a question, Mr. Chair.
Yep.
Maybe I missed it, I apologize. The rural counties there was a fee then to the Rural Counties Association.
Yes.
So it's kind of
It's actually about a $1,500 plus. I think rural counties is 2,500. This is 1,000. So, and nothing against rural counties. They do great work.
Right.
But most of what I spent the last year when I went to meet, most of those counties have their own hospitals. It's just a different mix of what they're advocating for. I think the group we belong to the Northeast region, that group, I think is John and Garrow's done a good job of advocating for the things that we're most interested in there. So that's why I kind of have changed my mind. I was one that thought rural counties would be a good group for us. Gives us one more advocacy. They're great people. They weren't very excited about talking about tilt. And they had no clue what ICWA meant. And so I think that's why I think it is coming from. Yes.
And one thing too, if a year or two from now, we decide, hey, this isn't for us.
Yeah, we don't have to stay in it forever.
Yeah, we don't have to do nothing, but I think it's one thing that's been on our radar for a few years and.
Yeah.
And we decided to try the rural counties and that one wasn't what we thought it was. So we'll try this.
Yeah, how do we feel about rush line? 'Cause I was on that for a couple of years and all the money staying in the metro.
Yeah.
You can't, no matter how much you talk, it's not gonna happen.
I don't know what the exit strategy is there. But maybe that's something we should look into.
Maybe something we talk about at our planning session in January.
The only cost for Rush Line, I don't believe there's a membership fee. I think it's just we pay a proportionate share of the insurance,
Yeah, I think.
which is like $50-ish. So whether we're a member or not, certainly is a discussion topic, but there's not a lot of money on the table.
Possible to get a list of all of the that we have a membership through and then what the
Oh,
costs are from them. So
I think we have that, Terry, but we'll Give you another copy.
Or if we could, and then the fees so that we could talk about it at that meeting?
Yep.
Just see what's there.
Yep. We got a motion by Moore, seconded by Holland to join the Highway 23 coalition. Any more discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Then we gets us to the 2022 Pine County Property Tax Levy and Budget. Had this in front of us for 8 months.
I guess it was getting easier.
That was my.
Well, we've worked on this for a long time, so I think we all,
Mr. Chair, if I may,
Yep.
in my board request, I did lay out that we were able to identify about $60,000 worth of savings in the general fund that you have not previously seen. So I did have an attachment that listed what those changes were, which I mean, I'm happy to walk through them. In the general fund, we were planning to spend reserves, so that just allows us to spend less reserves. And then in the highway fund, Mark just had some things moved between different line items, but the net did change to 0. And then in the building fund, we levied $25,000. And on the expense side in the building fund, then we list an expense of $25,000. But annually, we actually receive $10,000 from the sale of the John Wright building from the city of Sandstone. So with that, just for more accurate budgeting, I was able to recognize that additional $10,000 worth of revenue and then $10,000 of additional expense. Are there questions on any of the changes?
no.
It was very laid out nicely.
So we have 2 separate resolution. One is for the levy, which is 21-77. We need a motion for that. Nobody has big questions for Kelly.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 2021-77. 2022 property tax levy.
I'll go second.
And a motion by Lovegren, second by Ludwig to set the property tax levy at $20,652,675 in resolution 2021-77. Any question? If not, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Then we're looking for a resolution 2021-78, which is the budget, which corresponds to the levy.
I will move resolution 2021-78.
I'll second it.
Got a motion by Moore, seconded by Lovegren to adopt the budget in resolution 2021-78. Any discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Establish the non-union cost of living adjustments, the COLAs.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
We have all of our bargaining agreements settled at a 2% cost of living for 2022, except for the one that's later on your agenda. So we have a tentative agreement on that one. And so we're asking that we set non-union cost of living adjustment the same 2%.
This is, we've kind of followed the union contracts. So our non-union people can stay in line.
Is it,
Got a motion by Ludwig,
I'll second.
seconded by Moore. Are there any questions or comments on that? If not, all in favor, say aye. Opposed? Now we consider the county contribution towards health insurance premiums for non-union employees and elected officials. And we've got a chart there that shows the county contribution and the employee cost. Pretty self.
Motion to accept the non-union cost or the health insurance for non-union and elected officials.
I'll second that.
Got a motion by Lovegren, seconded by Moore to set the healthcare costs for non-union employees and elected officials. Any discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Establish citizen board and committee per diem.
Chair, we had a 7-point labor agreement with the.
Oh, that's right. That's,
Dispatchers that we had added.
yes, I'm
Snuck it
sorry.
In there.
Yep.
And so we have a tentative agreement that was approved by the bargaining unit. And this was the agreement that came out of the mediation that we were in at the end of November. And it's a 3-year agreement. It provides for a cost of living adjustment for 2022 of 2%, for 2023 of 2%, and 2024 of 3.25%. And we have settled with all of the other bargaining units for 2022 and 2023. So there's consistency across all 9 units with that, or all units with that. And then 2024, this group is a year out in front of the other units. We did add a performance pay component. The performance pay is identical to what we offer to the deputies through their bargaining unit, and it's up to 2% at 15 years of employment, and it's subject to a satisfactory performance review by the sheriff or designee, or the jail administrator in this case. And the health insurance, we have for single coverage in all 3 years, the county takes the first 6% of any increase, and then any increase above that is split 50-50. Family coverage, the county takes 70% of the increase and the employee takes 30% of the increase. We did delete the fair share language based on a lawsuit from a couple of years ago that made those provisions illegal. And
Janice.
yes, Janice lawsuit. I think that is everything. Oh, no, I'm sorry. My notes cut off for some reason. You have a uniform allowance carryover that goes into effect in 2022 to 2023, where we're allowing employees to carry over money that they have unspent in their uniform allowance. They cannot carry over, or they cannot have a total of more than $1,000 in their accounts. And so I think that is all of the changes.
All right,
I'll move that, Mr. Chair.
all right.
I'll second.
Got a motion by Ludwig, seconded by Moore to approve the contract as described. Any discussion, questions? If not, all in favor, say aye.
I,
Opposed? Now, we'll establish the citizen board and committee per diems. This is not the county commissioner per diems. This is when people sit on a board that
They have to.
ask them to, and they get a per diem. And the fee rate,
That's my question.
they all the same, David?
They are all the same, Mr. Chair, and we went to a uniform $75 maybe 2 years ago, we brought everyone into alignment, and state statute limits the HRA to $75. It's the only one that I'm aware of has a statutory limit.
I'll move the per diem rates. 1-80.
I'll second it.
Motion by Moore, second by Lovegren to approve the per diem rates at $75 per meeting. Resolution 2021-82. Any discussion? Not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Now we're gonna have a Corona response update. Sam, you on? Hey, Sam,
Can everybody hear me?
you bet.
Fabulous. All right, I'm just gonna quick.
Before Sam starts, I want to point out something. We have all these award-winning people in our county, and Sam is one of them. And she won an award. Terry was there the other night from St. Croix River Ed District, which represents all the schools in the county, for her great work that she's done with the schools, being their advisor on public health issues as they relate to the coronavirus. So Sam, we're very proud of you, and thanks for, I told her earlier, thanks for always having that positive outlook, and even though you're sometimes telling us stuff we don't want to hear, you tell it to us, and we appreciate that. So thank you.
Can I add?
Yep.
So I talked to you the other night, and we had the meeting here with the schools, and for them to talk about you and your team and the things that you did, but then to go above that and to go and hear them talk about you at the meeting, and then to watch you skip up to get your award. And she did skip. It's just a blessing, and your team is amazing, and you're a good leader for that team. So I just want to thank you for everything that you do. It's always good to hear positive things about our employees, and I've heard nothing but great things about the things that you have done. So thank you.
Definitely a team effort. The school, I am not the only one supporting our schools last year or this year. It's a team effort, but it's been quite a ride. They know my face well now. Thank you. Yeah, it was really fun. It was a good night. So the whole reason why the schools know me as well as they do is COVID. So let me give you a quick COVID update. The host has disabled screen sharing. I cannot share my screen. Thank you. All right. Can you? Oh, I can see that. You can see my screen. Handy. So quick update. I just like doing visuals because I'm a visual person, I'm a visual learner. So I'm not going to hopefully spend too long and belabor the data because I'm the only one very excited about data. But I do want to start off with just the idea that I talked about really, really early on in the pandemic, and I think has been forgotten at times. In the end, it'll be impossible to know if we overreacted or did too much, but it will be very, very, very apparent if we underreacted or did too little. So when you're thinking of, should I care? Should I do things? You'll know if you should have cared, but it may be, not necessary. You'll never know. So just a good little nugget. So just quick snapshot of where we're sitting for Pine County. As of yesterday, we have 5,528 cases so far in the county. The past month-ish, we've been averaging 150 to 200 cases a week, which is quite high as a rate for how many people we have living in the county. And so far, we've had 47 people in our community die. From September onward, we've had on average about one person per week die who lives in our county, which is rather staggering if you think about it. Think about how, if you just hear about a death from some other random accident, it's very rare and it's a big thing and it's in the news. Every week somebody's dying from this, and it is not only people living in long-term care facilities at this point. We have young people dying, we have middle-aged people dying, people who don't have a ton of underlying health conditions. So it's getting around. So here's just a nice visual. I'm sorry, it's a little blurry because it's a screenshot of a chart that I keep track of. But just this is pure numbers, raw case count per week. So you can see from the very, very beginning, here it was our prison outbreak. Here was our big spike last November. So we haven't reached that high yet. Then we came right back, we came way down. We had a smaller spike in April, came way down. The summer was glorious. I missed those days. And then we came back up and here we are sitting quite high. Last week was a little bit lower, but we don't know if that's just a weird quirk or if it comes back up because sometimes they do that, or if it's going to be a trend. We just don't know yet. So that's kind of where we're sitting right now, is quite, generally speaking, high. For vaccines, we are sitting at 49.8% of eligible people, so 5+, have at least one dose. And so we're really close to half. I'll be really excited when we hit 50. But right now we are the 4th lowest vaccination rate in the county, or in the state. If you look down in the metro, they're hitting around 80% vaccinated. So just to give you context of where we could be, that is not to say vaccines are not available around here. We are out and about every week, multiple times a week. We are at schools, we are at our offices. So people can get them, they're just not choosing. So what happens if you're vaccinated? What's the point? Why do we care? This is a Minnesota snapshot. Not just us, but you can see down here. So this bright green line is those who are vaccinated and if they've gotten a case of COVID. Blue, not fully vaccinated. So you can see, yep, we do have people who are testing positive for COVID who are vaccinated. It is not 100% protection. That's not how that any vaccine works. But you are still at a greater risk if you're unvaccinated. A significant difference there. But the reason why we really care is not just like, I just don't want you getting sick. I really don't want you ending up in the hospital and dying. And if you're fully vaccinated, your risk of ending up in the hospital and ending up dying has been the same this whole time. It's been quite low. It's not zero. There are people who are dying who have been vaccinated, but it's a very, very, very low risk, especially when you compare it to people who are not vaccinated. This was the summer lull where we just didn't have many cases at all. So there's nobody being hospitalized because nobody was getting COVID. And then whoop, up it goes. And this is through sometime in November. And the past couple of weeks have been worse for us. So I would assume this is actually going to go up. So why do we care that you end up hospitalized? I mean, it's my job to care about everybody's health. Everybody just usually cares about themselves, but it's literally my job to care about the community's health. But we care because if you're taking up a hospital bed, there are not hospital beds for other people. So here's a snapshot of truly yesterday's bed count in the state. It's by region. So you can see here, technically Pine County is in the central region, although very likely most of our community would end up either up in Duluth or down in the metro, because if you're in Pine, you're probably not going to drive to Centricare, which is where the ICU beds are in the region. So if you're an adult and you need an ICU bed in Pine, there are 4 yesterday, 1 up in Duluth and 3 down in the metro. So if you have, a couple people in your car and you have a car accident, no bueno. If you, have a non-emergent heart surgery that you need because you need a pacemaker or whatnot, you better hope there's a bed, because people who are unvaccinated and we continue to have these high number of cases and a percentage of them are going to need to be hospitalized. They're taking up beds. And then it's a ripple effect amongst the community of not just people who have COVID, but it's people who don't have COVID and need a hospital bed for whatever procedure they need. It could be a kiddo. Here's the kiddo beds, who just really needs, fluids for a couple of days because she has some, she has croup or whatever. You better hope we can find her a bed. This is better than I've seen it over the past couple of weeks, by the way, of having 4 beds in the metro open. That's better than it's been. And it's just 4. So I'm legitimately nervous as a parent thinking about how many beds are available right now for my kid. Not that they need a bed, but knock on wood. It makes me nervous. So it's a numbers game. And this is why we care about people being vaccinated, because you are far less likely to take up a hospital bed, overwhelm our very, very tired hospital providers, healthcare providers who are very tired, and it's Christmas. So that's where we're at with hospital beds, and that's why we generally talk about vaccinations. Just to briefly touch on Omicron, which is obviously the new name in the game. We only identified it a little over a month ago, month and a half, and it is spreading like wildfire. It is very good at its job of spreading. A couple weeks ago in the US, we had 3% of cases were Omicron. The week later was about 13%. Last week it was 75%. So it's just that exponential growth. The UK saw 1 week was 35. The next week was 500 and some. The following week was 10,000. So it is just an exponential growth that is not great for our already tired healthcare system. There's a lot of information coming out really, really fast. So the things I tell you today, there's probably gonna be more information tomorrow, so don't be surprised. Generally, it looks like it's gonna be a shorter incubation period, which sounds lovely in theory, because you're like, oh, shorter quarantine period if I'm exposed. That sounds great. Because generally the old strain was 7 days, Delta brought it down to 5, Omicron's looking to be around 3. But the problem is, if I'm infectious right now, I breathe on all y'all in person, not virtually. And then I go get tested. Well, it takes about a day or two to get the test results. By the time I find out I'm positive and then, hey, call you up and go, hey, I was positive, you're already infectious and breathing on people. So it makes it really, really hard to contact trace and then quarantine and actually slow it down because of that shorter incubation period of you becoming infectious. So it's actually not a good thing. The old strain was kind of pokey. It took its time. What we've heard so far is it is clearly more infectious. I talked about that already. It's probably not more severe, but be careful because you're going to see headlines that say it's less severe, and that is not the same thing as not more severe. So it could be less severe, and we're hoping it is, but there's a lot of confounding factors there of figuring out if it's actually less severe or if it's because, oh, everybody's already had COVID in this population that we just studied, and that's why it seems less severe. So piecing that out and really finding the correlation, the causation, not just the correlation of those, takes time. So we're still figuring that out. The thing to remember is, let's say it is less severe. That sounds great. But if it's as infectious as it's looking like it is, what ends up happening is it is a lower risk for you individually, less severe, but you're more likely to catch it. But you're not gonna end up in the hospital as likely, so cool. But it's actually a greater risk for the whole, because if a whole bunch of people catch it at the same time, which is gonna happen if it's more infectious, it's still gonna overwhelm our hospital systems and we are tired. So it's kind of a numbers game of playing with percentiles of, if only 1% end up in the hospital versus 2, hey, it's half as severe. And those are hypothetical numbers. But if 10 times more people catch it, you're gonna have more people in the hospital. So not great. So we still wanna try and prevent the spread of Omicron, just like every other strain, even if it's less severe. So what are we telling everybody to do? The playbook hasn't really changed. Little quirks here though, little tweaks. Obviously, we are still telling everybody, please get vaccinated. It really does work. The risk is low. The benefits are very high. But more recently, we really want you to get boosted, particularly with the Omicron strain, because we're seeing that 2 doses or the 1 J&J are not enough to really give you good protection, but that booster really kicks up your antibody levels, and it really does provide good protection again. And 3 doses of a series is not that exciting in terms of like the vaccine world. We get 3 doses all the time of MMR and Hep B, like 3 doses is not crazy. And you get the flu shot every year. So other things you can do, wear your mask when you're gathering inside. If you're all gonna be together and you're not in the same house, you're not in a bubble together, wear a mask. Yes, it really does help. if you're gonna get together with a whole bunch of people, say you're having Christmas together, we're not saying don't gather for Christmas. We know it's important for people to get together, have those social connections. But hey, have everybody test the morning of with a rapid test. You can get them at Walmart, you can get them at Walgreens, wherever you feel like, Amazon. Get the, it's just a little nasal swab. It's not way up in your brain. It literally looks like a little pregnancy test. You wait for the lines, 2 lines is bad. 1 line is good. And then you generally know that day you're probably not infectious, but you really want to do it the day of, because your body can ramp up really quickly. And then the next day you could test positive, but you could feel good the day of that. Hey, let's all get together. We're all vaccinated and we're all going to test the morning of, and then get together and have your lovely Christmas gatherings. So that's what we're recommending for holidays. But if you are feeling sick, please stay home. Even if you test negative, please stay home. I do not want that germ either. I don't want COVID, and I don't want the other random germ you might have if that's something different. Test negative, still don't want that. So stay home if you're sick. That's what I got. There's your David dump. Questions?
The SWCD is.
I got a
Any
question.
quick, yeah, go ahead.
So the booster, are they saying, I remember with the first vaccine, some people got really sick the first time, some people got really sick the second time.
Mhm.
What's the booster like, or are you getting any?
So just our general observation from everybody we've talked to / our staff who've gotten it is it hit kind of somewhere in the middle between how you felt with your first dose and how you felt with your second dose. So for me, I took a nap in the middle of the day and I was tired, but I also had a toddler keep me up all night. So really hard to ascribe completely to the vaccine. And then my arm was sore. So I did not have it as bad as my second dose. So I felt pretty good. I bounced back pretty quick. My husband was fine. So somewhere in between the first and second dose in terms of like how you felt the day after. It goes away after a day or two really quickly though.
The other thing I just wanted to say is I just looking at these numbers over the last little bit, and it is amazing how much the vaccine helps people stay out of the hospital. And that is, I think, like you said, you can still get it. I think a lot of people have got it, didn't even know they had it, but the people that are sick and or get, the hospitals are getting overwhelmed and I don't quite understand the reasoning, when the numbers were way higher last year. I mean, we heard this, but it seems like it's almost more critical now than it was back then. So I don't know. So that's just what I've noticed on it. So I appreciate all the information.
That's what I'm here for.
Thanks, Sam.
I have a question.
Yep.
So is there any, I was talking to somebody the other day who their relative had not been vaccinated and they got COVID. And so she's on a test and they test her every month to see if she still has the antibodies. It's been 9 months now and she still has antibodies for it. So is there any statistics that you have to share on that? Because I mean, we've got a low number. So I think we need to look at both sides and how we can help all people.
So we never want to suggest to people to go get COVID in the hopes that you will develop antibodies because you also have the risk of dying. So never going to be the strategy we lean into. But they've looked at antibody levels of if you've gotten vaccinated, and they've looked at it if you have had just a natural infection. The really cool thing is they've seen antibody levels up here and then they slowly wane. Like that happens. It's not the only vaccine that happens to. But then they got the booster and it shot up really, really high, like way above where it was originally. And it's kind of consistently stayed high, which is positive. We still are early on in the booster phase of this response. So we're not sure if it'll last years or not, but it was quite high. Just because you can identify that they have antibodies, if you're positive for antibodies, does not mean it is a high enough level of antibodies to be protective. So like, with a booster, it's like this much antibodies and it looks really good and you should feel pretty confident. You could have this many antibodies and you'll show as having antibodies from a natural infection, but that may not actually protect you enough to actually fight off another round of it. And we're seeing people get COVID twice after having COVID the first time pre-vaccines. So yes, you can have an antibody test and be like, woo, I still have antibodies. It doesn't necessarily tell you the level of antibodies and at what level it's protective. So I wouldn't lean too heavily on that particular test.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Thanks, Sam.
Mhm.
We're definitely not out of the woods on this deal.
It's not done with us
I
yet,
don't,
even if
I
we
don't
really
know
want.
if we're halfway in the woods, but we're in the woods.
So, Mr. Chair,
Yes.
also as part of the coronavirus response update, I presume everyone follows the news enough to know that the OSHA order or the emergency temporary standard that was delayed on Friday, the stay was dissolved. And so now the OSHA mandate for large employers to require the vaccine is back in place. Minnesota is a min-OSHA state. We follow the rule that the state of Minnesota will write versus the federal rule. That rule has not been written yet, but it must be at least as effective as the federal rule. So the federal rule can give us some guidance. And so Jackie is on the call and she can maybe review what we know about the federal rule and how we think it will apply to Pine County, knowing, of course, everything is subject to change.
Sure. Mr. Chair, members of the board, this is Jackie Quevisto, Human Resources Manager. And we can't be certain when the min-OSHA rule will be in play and what exactly it will say. However, based on the federal rule, we can expect that the county, that Pine County will be required to maintain a listing of all employees with their vaccination status. Currently, the federal rule defines fully vaccinated as 1 shot of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine or 2 shots of the other. It did not address, or it did not say that the booster was required under the current information that we have. Not saying that you shouldn't have it, but we will also ensure compliance with the mask requirements for employees that are unvaccinated and will remain unvaccinated. So we will be enforcing the mask mandate. We will be required to provide up to 4 hours of paid time for employees to receive a vaccination. We are also required to provide employees will have recovery time should they need to recover from the vaccine, but I believe that will be on the employee. Failure to follow the rules according to the guidelines that have been provided. These are safety rules, so not following them would mean that that employee could be subject or would be subject to discipline. And that discipline would be on a case-by-case basis reviewed as such. That's
So
what we know at this point.
Yeah, so the federal guidelines go into effect pretty quickly. I'm drawing a blank on the date, but is it January 4th? Do you know?
I believe
Jackie?
it's January 3rd.
And so the state has 30 days typically to adopt its own rules. And so we would not expect that we would have more than 30 days beyond the federal deadline. So we're kind of waiting to see what MinOSHA does. The last communication that I saw yesterday was they still don't have a timeline, but I presume they're furiously working.
So it really comes down to an OSHA violation, Jackie. If you're required to wear a hard hat and you don't wear a hard hat, you would be cited OSHA violation. And if OSHA says you need a vaccination and you don't have one, then you would be cited or.
You'd be subject to discipline. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and so to split the hair,
Yeah.
OSHA would cite the employer.
Yeah.
The employer would then take the action the employer would take based on its policies and procedures.
Yeah.
I got a question if I can.
Yeah.
With the hard hat comment, I understand that clearly. But people that are required to wear a hard hat, if they're not in a danger zone, or if there isn't any imminent threat, they're not required. You don't see them put it on in the morning and leave it on all days, or is there any kind of clarification or anything where they compare? I mean, OSHA violation is a serious thing.
Yeah.
Period.
And they, so in the rule, it specifies who is exempt from the rule. And so if you are a completely work from home employee, you would not be required to be vaccinated. If you were an employee who worked completely outdoors, 100% of the time, except for de minimis use of, say, a public restroom, you would be exempt from the rules. And so there are some exceptions, and there may be more. I haven't read the rule exhaustively, so, but I'm just reciting a couple that I know I've seen.
So we're saying that if you're not vaccinated, though, you wear a mask.
Yes.
Yes, that is what the rule requires.
Yep.
And then there's guidelines for that. If you're in a private office, for example, you would not have to wear the mask all the time.
So I think one of the questions came up from one of the department heads earlier. If they are vaccinated, they do not have to wear a mask, correct?
That's
Only the unvaccinated.
That's correct. And so in addition to, if you're unvaccinated, there's the mask requirement. There's also a requirement for regular weekly testing.
Okay. So has Pine County talked about how they're going to do the weekly testing?
The federal rule puts that onus on the employee, that if they elect not to follow the mandate of getting the vaccine, that they would then have to provide the test results. And so Jackie is working to figure out what a policy would look like that complied with the rule.
Because I understand that the state pays for their state employees to be tested. So if we go under the state, then would the county be paying for the testing or would we provide it when people walk in the door?
So the federal rule does not require that the employer pay for the testing. The state rule, we have to get and interpret yet, right? So it could have some nuances to it. We know that Pine County currently pays for testing of some employees. For example, we test employees in the jail because we think that's the right thing to do. So there's no prohibition in the federal standard for the employer to pay for the testing. So at this point, it's not resolved, but we know the federal rule does not require it. Does that make sense?
Yep.
And I don't mean to sound like it's not understood, but I just want to be sure that we understand that the Minnesota rule has to actually be written and then interpreted. And so everything we say is speculating off the federal rule, which is likely going to be verbatim what our rule is, but we just don't know that. Okay. And then there's a lot of lawyers who are going to get involved, right?
Yeah, it's already happening.
Including ours.
Yeah. So, but I think it's, at this point, it is our reality, right? We have to be prepared to respond to the MinOSHA rule. So Jackie is working on that. We've had some preliminary communication with department heads just to say that as of last Friday, this is coming. And I expect there'll be a lot more that happens in the next couple of weeks. And if we're on the topic of vaccinations, maybe just throw out that there are some workplaces that incentivize vaccination through a cash payment. Washington County is one of those. They have a program to pay employees. And so if you go back to the charts that Sam had shown up there on the screen, there is a significant difference in the outcomes of people who are vaccinated versus unvaccinated. And if you looked at the chart in like June, July over the summer, where transmission rates were really low, infection rates were really low, hospitalizations, deaths were really low, that is our goal, right? To get those rates low to zero. And so vaccination is the most, if we're going to continue to associate with other people, vaccination is the single most effective tool that we have at our disposal.
Can I chime in briefly?
Yep.
I would just also point out, as far as the thought of incentivizing a vaccine, may sound like, oh, well, we don't want to spend that money. But if we incentivize people to be vaccinated, our healthcare costs theoretically will be less because they're less likely to be hospitalized and we are insuring them and we do foot that bill. So theoretically, it could be a cost savings mechanism if we get enough people vaccinated.
That is, I'm sorry, that is a real savings, and Jackie has started to get data from our insurance company that is showing our out-of-pocket costs because we're self-insured. That ties back to COVID treatments. So that is, at this point, I wouldn't say it's significant, right? But it could easily become a significant driver of our healthcare costs.
And I would add just daily doing business. I mean, when you got a healthcare or employment crisis like we're in, where you can't find people and you're short-staffed, if all of a sudden people are sick and it rolls through a department or an office, it's a real deal. So.
Thank you, Jackie. Thank you, Sam. We're only silent because we're processing all your information, but thank you. We will move on to, I'm sure we will have at our next meeting. Stay tuned. Special meeting in the county board for a HRA strategy planning session. We're looking at January 11th at 10 a.m. How does that look for people?
You need a motion or just consensus?
We would set it as a special meeting. And so we'll just do that if that's the consensus.
Hear anybody jumping up and down saying, no, no, no.
We're going to have the strategic planning board meeting that same day afterwards.
Well, that's the next thing on the agenda is when is the best day for the planning, strategic planning session? Is it that day or is it the afternoon after our board meeting? Is there another day?
So sorry that I made this more confusing than it needed to be because I got focused on the HRA joint strategic planning. And then after the fact, thought, well, the county commissioners probably want an opportunity to sit down amongst themselves and discuss and think through their strategic priorities for the year. And so we're looking just to schedule that for a time. And it's conceivable we could do it on the 11th after the joint meeting. It's also conceivable that we could do it on the 18th after the regular board meeting.
How long do you think the HRA meeting is going to take?
I would think that's at least 4 hours. I mean, that's probably a little longer because there's going to be presumably 10 folks in the room who have not done this before. And I say we, you commissioners in the county have high expectations of what the HRA role is for the future economic development in the county. And so I think that we don't want to cut it short. And I think those people are looking for some conversation and direction.
Yeah, and I think on our strategic tech planning, I like having fresh minds too, instead of tired minds. And the same, but we also want to stick that meeting in educating on our finance or structure, so would that one be quicker?
I don't know.
Add that one, like, remember when we had the investment committee and we thought we should get everybody up?
Yeah.
That works.
And that we don't necessarily have to do that in January.
I know, but it's the sooner the better because it helps everybody understand stuff. I'm not trying to muddy the water.
Oh, no. And I'm not either. I'm just trying to get the year off to a positive start with making sure that you feel that you've had the opportunity to think through what your priorities are and give direction, get feedback from department heads.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think the strategic plan should happen in January month, right?
What does the 12th look like? I'm with Matt. If you get up from one meeting and you have a cup of coffee and sit down at the next, it's hard.
Wednesday is wide open for me.
Especially if it's a 4-hour meeting.
Yeah.
There's nothing on the commissioner calendar on Wednesday, January 12th.
I'm just wondering, David, if that isn't if we started at 10. And then we could take a lunch break if we thought we needed to, and because that really charts our course for the year.
Yeah.
So you're talking the 12th, not the 18th, right?
Pardon me?
The 12th, not the 18th, correct?
That's what I would prefer, except I know it takes another day, but when I'm done with a board meeting, it's really hard to wipe that out of your mind and then get back and talk about what we're gonna do for the whole year.
Yeah. I liked last year when we had a whole day where we could talk
Yeah.
about things and discuss. So yeah,
Does the 12th work?
it does.
It looks like JJ is still looking. I don't know if you're adding it to your schedule or if you're.
Yeah, well, I'm just looking at whatever I can make it work. It'll be remote for me.
Which one's for the 12th? No, I didn't hear all that.
That would be the county specific strategic planning.
Does that work, Matt?
Works for me.
Let's try that, David.
Okay, perfect. And
That
we'll
work for
start,
you?
yep, we'll start at 10 and we'll plan for lunch. And sounds like JJ is going to be remote on that one.
Yeah, right through the month for.
I hope you're not going to Alaska.
No.
Heading to south.
Not yet. It'll be then. There you go.
All right, thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
You're gonna post it? I mean, put on the calendar?
Okay. Then we go to the organizational meeting.
And I presume it's at 10 o'clock. The statute just doesn't fix the time. It just says the day. So if 10 o'clock works, we will plan for that on the 4th.
Sounds good.
That'd be our regular
Yep.
meeting date anyway.
Yep, I know.
It's our regular meeting date, but by statute, it tells us what we have to meet first Tuesday after the first Monday, which is appropriate for us. So I'm assuming that would be all right. We'll move on then to Pine Commissioner updates. Law Library.
Yeah, we had a meeting. Biggest thing we did is review the inventory of the law library, and they've kind of went around here and there. Most of them, well, all of them, books are all Greek to me. I have no idea what Judge Martin and a couple attorneys that are on there kind of discussed them. There's a few that they decided we just don't need to put back in. There's quite a few that we just need to update that either went missing or whatever. And Judge Martin just said, I think it's kind of the cost of doing business. I mean, the stuff gets lost and doesn't get returned, but they need to be there. So I think they were going to get a list and prices and get them refilled. So otherwise, that was about it. There really wasn't anything else. So.
Central Minnesota Jobs and Training, it was the annual audit report, which is all like watching paint dry. We got through it. And that was about the extent of it. The East Central Solid Waste Commission, guess what? It's time to buy a new Packer.
Didn't you just get that one?
Yeah, and it's got 10,000, it'll have 10,000 hours on it.
All right.
And we've kind of decided we don't want to own one, but that's not on warranty anymore because they are so prone to breaking down. The bad news is they've gone up in price like by $300,000 if we stuck with cap. But anyway, we'll get prices next meeting and we'll be amazed. I did bring up the point because we're in the very, very preliminary start of we're gonna have to start planning for another cell. And if we're ever gonna quit doing what we're doing, we gotta think about doing something else. And so does that mean, because other places in the world are developing these smaller incinerator things and they really have developed a technology to scrub the particulates out of the air, which has always been the problem with burning garbage. And I don't know if that's
How
ever.
does that initial investment compare to the cell development?
Oh, it's probably way more, but I mean, long-term, I don't know. Because you got a pretty small amount of ashes you got to worry about landfilling instead of the whole works. And our population has increased in East Central Minnesota, but the garbage has increased exponentially compared to population. And I think we all know that because we all go shopping and we come home with this enormous amount of stuff we got to throw away. One thing our engineer did say is, places that are really looking at recycling. One area that is in education that can really help is the food waste. We throw away an exorbitant amount of food compared to the amount we buy, and that's making up. In some cases, 20% of a garbage collection.
So a member of the Clean Plate Club in that group.
Yeah. So anyway, I think the conversation just needs to start someplace, and so I started it. East Central Library.
We talked about the Sandstone Prison. They have a contract where they pay $8,000 a year to get materials, and they're questioning how much they're paying. So that's one of the things. They were, their email system was hacked, and so they were dealing with that issue. So if you got any weird emails from the library, be careful. And then the other thing that they talked about is they had some major threats that were made to the libraries and to the people. And it was a Pine County resident, so it was kind of sad to hear that had happened. But that's one of they ended up bringing the police into it, and we're dealing with that. So that was a lot of the conversation.
Like email threats?
Well, email and Facebook, and I think they showed up at the library. There were a couple different libraries that
Really?
attacked. Yeah.
St. Croix River Ed District Legislative Forum. You were there, Terry.
I have to think about it. So they talked about a lot of the things, and we were talking earlier about how the state has this big surplus. The schools were talking about if they took that surplus and paid what they had stated that they would pay towards special education, that would take care of their surplus. And I was thinking, no, they need to give it to us. But so that was a big part of it, is where that money goes. They asked some really good questions of their legislatures. And like I was saying earlier, they brought up broadband. And so it was good to talk to them about the RDOF funds and how the company that you had called, they don't have the manpower and they don't have the facilities to really do all of the people or all the counties and areas that they got the RDOF funds for. So to talk to them, to be able to talk to the congressional leaders and say, hey, can you just give us that money so that we can give it to the people who are really going to do the work? So we'll see where it goes. Talk to Congressman Stauber's representative, and he said he talks to Josh on a regular basis. So that was good. Keep up the good work.
Arrowhead counties.
I didn't go to the dinner.
Okay. Community Shack Board.
They actually did that one in one year while I listened to my grandson's Christmas program. But so they were talking about what was happening with COVID. They had that. They were talking about communications and how we can communicate better by doing smaller and not bigger, that type of stuff. And then they broke out into small groups, which I thought was interesting. How can we serve humans or our public health better? And it basically comes down to money and employees, which there's a shortage. I think one of them was talking about they would put out an advertisement for a job and they would get 50 applicants. Now, if they get 50 or 5, they're doing well. And if they get, 5 that are qualified for the job, they're doing really well. So a lot of talk about that.
Thank you. Regional development, JJ, I heard you say they didn't have a link.
No, I didn't see a need to put mileage on. I tried to zoom in, there was no Zoom link available. So, not attend.
I think you bring up a good point, and it's, I think, something we've all advocated for every group we belong to is put the darn thing on Zoom, especially on a day like today. There's no sense to drive to Sauk Rapids or Monticello or something for an hour-long meeting that, I don't know. So anyway, we'll keep it up. Check out your meetings.
I have another.
Yes.
Just an update on the ag educator.
Oh,
We had
yeah.
Interviews last Thursday. They were from 9:30 till 6.
Oh.
So it
okay.
was a long day, but we have 2 strong candidates and then a third place. We interviewed 4 people. So hopefully we'll have somebody by the end of January.
Good. How about the 4-H coordinator?
We didn't talk about that, but I think that the goal was they're going to be doing those interviews and we haven't heard any more on that. Have you heard it, Josh? No, so they were going to be doing those interviews and I haven't heard where they're at with that. And then once they get that, and then they can, but I think that they're out searching to see who they can get, but they need to get some issues fixed.
Good. All right. Are we ready to go into closed session?
We are, if
And-
someone wants to make that motion.
And it is
I will,
session in there.
Okay, so
Here.
it can be here. We are proposing a closed session for tax court litigation. Ryan will maintain the Zoom, but turn off the video and audio so that we can stay here if commissioners are comfortable with that. And there's no one going to join the closed meeting remotely. Everyone will be physically in the room.
Okay. So we need a motion to go into closed session.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I will move to go into closed session as allowed by Minnesota statutes 13D.05 subdivision 3B. The attorney-client privilege to discuss pending litigation for property values payable 2020 and 2020 in the case Walmart Inc. versus Pine County.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We will take a 3-minute break and then we'll be in closed session. And we're back in full session. Oh. Any other business that needs to come before the board?
Just a reminder that you should have a blank sheet of committee appointments for the January 4th organizational meeting. And so if you spend your Christmas holiday reviewing that and figuring out
I'm sure we will.
what you're interested in.
Where's that at?
I think it was sent out with the Friday update.
Yeah.
If you
Okay,
want a paper copy, I'll just print you one right now.
yeah, I'll
Please.
take it.
I'll take one too.
All right.
I have mine with me all the time, my paper copy.
Give the new one.
No other business